it comes from pertaining to the heart. So when we take actions and we recognize that there's a great personal cost that we're paying, but we take that action because it's the right thing to do. And when he says that he's the only one who's standing up, then we have to recognize that takes a lot of courage. He's had a lot of sacrifice. That word sacrifice, the least of the sacrifices, I would say, is the professional sacrifices that he's undergone. It's the family sacrifices, the time away from his wife, his kids, and the relationships that matter most. And he does that because it's the right thing to do, and no one else is doing it. And our TLC community is very aware that we stand very strong for the principles and speaking truth, and we choose love. So you're going to hear the science, you're going to hear about his research, you're going to hear how he's transforming the way people are thinking, and it's going to challenge us. It's going to challenge us to do something differently and not to let him be the only one who's being courageous to share this. And the last word I picked was impact. And all of you know, because in 6 Minutes of Science, I always pointed to Dr. McCullough's work and the McCullough Protocol and how committed he was that we have to help people not get to the point where they need to be hospitalized. And I always gave him credit, and I always pointed to the fact that he was the only one publishing the research that said how to help people live beyond the pandemic, not address how they were dying. So I'm very excited that he's going to share his research, his studies. He's going to share stories with us. And then after this first session, we have a brief break, and then we're going to come back together and we're going to help this information be translatable to how everybody is taking this information and bringing it to our families and to our communities and making a difference. So if you all would do me the honor of standing up, celebrating Dr. McCullough and his commitment.
Thank you so much, and let me extend my welcome to each and every one of you for coming out in the snowy winter weekend here in Philadelphia. It's really snowy to me, living in Texas. I've lived in Texas most of my life, but as a child, actually, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so I remember those snowy Western New York days. And then for a period of time, I lived in Michigan. It doesn't get as much snow as you do here, but so I've felt the sting of slushy ice in the shoes and chiseling the windshield of the car and all the things that you endure. About 50% of the country actually lives in snow. There's just over 50%, and the others don't. But as introduced, I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. I'm a practicing internist and cardiologist in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I hold degrees from Baylor University, University of Texas Southwestern, University of Michigan, national champions, and Southern Methodist University. I did my residency training at University of Washington in Seattle, another Final Four team, and then my cardiology fellowship at what's now the Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine in Detroit. I had leadership positions in academic medicine my entire career. The last one I held was at a major medical center in Dallas, and that's when the sojourn starts with respect to COVID-19. And I felt so sufficiently moved by the crisis that I redirected all my efforts to do everything I could to help people, because I just saw such human tragedies start to play out early on, particularly at our seniors in nursing homes. And what shocked me is how the rest of academic medicine wasn't with me. And I'd always been a leader in my field. I was the most published person in my field in history. I still am. I'm one of the most published people now in COVID-19 in the entire world. As anybody you've seen on national TV, for sure I am. For sure. I've just come off testimony in Congress, a congressional hearing on Friday in Capitol Hill, and I'll have some highlights of that. But with that, let's launch into this great controversy. And this is more than just COVID. There is a great controversy that has made itself apparent in medicine, and it does reach to you in your fields as well. And the controversy actually has to do with what's in people's minds. So the first thing I want to show you is that the House Select Committee, the U.S. Congress, led by Brad Wenstrup from Ohio, is investigating the origins of SARS-CoV-2. Where did this virus come from? It got us all sick. And the conclusions are, in short, that the virus was created, the two papers at the top, by U.S. researchers collaborating with the Chinese. It's a U.S. creation. Dr. Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Peter Daszak at the Eco Health Alliance, that's a go-between NGO, and Dr. Shengli Li, who's the Zhengli, who's the bat lady in Wuhan. They actually created this virus. The two papers are published in 2015 and 2016. Now, back then, they called it a SARS-like Wuhan Institute of Virology 1 CoV. They refused to release the genetic code from their discoveries to see if it matches what got us sick. I would wager it's exactly the same virus. It was created in this lab years ago. There must have been some type of biosecurity breach. But the fraud started when Anthony Fauci commissioned Christian Anderson at Scripps, and later on his group, this Edwin Holmes at University of Sydney, this group of virologists to deceive the world and say the virus came out of nature. These were intentionally deceptive papers. This is the reason why Senator Rand Paul wrote a book and really believes Anthony Fauci should be in prison. He was part of the creation of SARS-CoV-2 that got the entire country sick, and he misled us all the way through the pandemic. It's the reason why Robert F. Kennedy wrote a book about Anthony Fauci. He's a real-time medical villain. And yet he survived 2 presidential administrations. He seemed to be untouchable, almost like a J. Edgar Hoover. This is what we know. How many of you have had the virus yourself? So just about everybody. Not everybody, but just about. So you've had this inside of you. This is a virus, SARS-CoV-2. The ball is the nucleocapsid. It contains proteins, in total about 29 proteins. The red bud is the spike protein. The spike protein is where all the genetic engineering went in to make this virus more infectious and more lethal. The spike protein. Okay, so we're going to mention this over and over again. It's got about 4,400 base pairs that code for about 1,200 amino acids. There's about 12 glycosylation side chains. It's intentionally manufactured. Part of it has a sequence that's homologous to an HIV glycoprotein. You've probably heard that some people after COVID and after the vaccine actually turn HIV positive. Small number. They don't have HIV, but the blood test will turn positive. That shows you how man-made and laboratory contrived the spike protein is. The spike protein in high enough doses is fatal to the human body. It is a fatal protein. It's actually in many ways worse than any protein we've ever experienced. So I'll follow this outline kind of like you're back in class, and we'll go through this. For new biological products, we have had a tradition of safety, safety, safety. Whenever we present clinical trials, we always say safety before efficacy. Doesn't matter how good a product is. If it's not safe, it doesn't move forward into human use, period. Period. And what I'm going to present to you is the first time on a mass scale where our government agencies completely threw safety out the window. In August of 2020, looking back, I was the only public figure in the world to challenge the vaccine development idea in writing. The only one. You can't find another opinion editorial in any paper. This is The Hill. This is a journal for the House, the Senate, and the White House, widely read. Every single other public figure had automatically assumed the vaccines were safe and effective. Automatically. Without any of the clinical trial results being returned. It was assumed, in fact, it was presumed that the vaccines were safe and effective. And within a few months of release, I was the second author on this paper, 57 authors, 17 countries. You can read the title. We have urgent questions regarding vaccine safety. We started writing this in March. It was published in May. And what we said in the paper is, listen, things are not working out with these vaccines. They don't look like they're safe. We have questions. We sent this to every government in the world administering these vaccines. No response. What are the issues? The messenger RNA vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, adenoviral vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, which are now off the market, they produce production of the spike protein, the dangerous part of the virus, for an uncontrolled duration and an uncontrolled quantity. It's the first time ever that we've injected in the human body the genetic code for a lethal protein with no idea how long the genetic code would last and where the spike protein would go and how much of it would be produced. It was the gamble of a lifetime. It's a gamble of all time for mankind. And it was administered on a mass scale. About 2/3 of the world's population took a vaccine. The United States, good data suggests 75% of people took a vaccine. There was no genotoxicity or teratogenicity studies. There was already a concerning ovarian biodistribution study. Reduced fertility in animals in the Moderna application in Europe. There was no safety committees. Once this was released to the public, there was no safety committees. We still have not had a safety review of the vaccines. It should be done periodically with any novel product introduced at a mass scale. No restriction of groups that were previously excluded. No, pregnant women and babies and others are always excluded from this. But very quickly, they got brought into this vaccine program without safety studies. No risk stratification for who would really need a vaccine. You know, in 2020, I was the co-principal investigator of a vaccine program that was presented to the FDA and the NIH. It was a cellular-based vaccine called the Imodulon vaccine. It didn't get funded, so we didn't move forward with our study. But the proposal was nursing home patients and those in congregate settings. Probably even if we had a safe vaccine, no more than 2.7 million Americans should have ever gotten a vaccine. But what we saw is quickly, this just spread through the population. Everybody had to take one. Even people that already had the illness, they were excluded from studies, down to 6-month-old babies. They actually never got severe COVID. There was no data transparency, no attempts to mitigate risk. Once things started to happen, there was no reformulation or evaluation of this. Safety was completely gone. So what do we know about safety? Our vaccine adverse event reporting system, which reports events and deaths on the left and right respectively, went off the Richter scale with COVID vaccines. Now in the years before, about half of the whole country takes a flu vaccine. We never saw serious events and deaths like this. The VAERS system, and by the way, VAERS system stands for Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's been around since 1990. I make reports to VAERS. You should make reports as well. If you see a vaccine injury, you go online and do the report. 86% of the time, it's a doctor or a paramedic that thinks the vaccine caused the problem. So it's a very intentional reporting system. You have to put your name, your office number. I mean, you're on the line if you make a VAERS report, and it's punishable by imprisonment or fine if you lie on a VAERS report. So what's in here is legit. When I do a VAERS report, it's very serious. Look at the data, upper left-hand corner of the box. This is through September 29th. 18,188 Americans have died due to the COVID-19 vaccine, as reported. 1,150 have died on the same day they take the shot. 1,150. And typically a drug product, if someone died right after they took it, 5, 10, 15, no more than 50 deaths off the market. And yet 1,150 died in the vaccine center or a few hours afterwards. And our agency showed no concern. Families were outraged. There's someone here tonight who lost her husband to this vaccine within about 2 weeks of taking it, with a known vaccine injury syndrome. It's astonishing. This safety report is astonishing. Now, if we don't have the vaccine card, and we don't have all the information, you can't do the report, because you have to have the lot number when they took the vaccine. The estimates are this is a 30-fold under-report. You multiply 30 times 18,000. We're looking at about 550,000 Americans are estimated to have lost their life after the vaccine. That's more than a war. Way more than a war. Worldwide estimates now, 17 million people have lost their life to the vaccine. Now, the American Board of Internal Medicine says, wait a minute, you can't prove these deaths were due to the vaccine, and large number of people died with COVID. So they're presenting a trade-off, like, okay, we'll sacrifice some lives with the vaccine for the theoretical benefit of saving a life with the vaccine. We never do that. That is a completely unethical trade-off, to ask somebody to lose their life with a vaccine for some type of theoretical population benefit. But yet these statements are made. It's right on the American Board of Internal Medicine website. These deaths have been evaluated, and yes, they are due to the vaccine. And no, large numbers of COVID deaths don't justify this. Right now in the United States, the tally is about 1.2 million COVID deaths. Now the CDC, based on their own data, admit about 10% of it is really due to COVID, and 90% had other significant contributors. We're talking 120,000 lives lost with COVID that probably all could have been saved with adequate early treatment, compared to 550,000 Americans who are dead. We can't retrieve them after the vaccine. Now, fortunately, many of you took the vaccine. Fortunately, many of you are in this lower group here. The group in yellow at the bottom. In this analysis from Denmark, they have all the Pfizer shots, all the lots, and all the side effects. 32.1% of doses, 0 side effects. None. Not even a sore arm. And the sore arm, by the way, is important. So when I ask somebody about their vaccine history, first thing I ask them is, did you have a sore arm? If the answer is no, it looks like they are free and clear. 63.7% of doses, some mild side effects, and 4.2% of doses. Those are the high-risk batches. That's where all the side effects are. But they're in specific batches. And the same data exists in the United States. Senator Ron Johnson analyzed the VAERS report. He found the same thing, and he sent it to the CDC and FDA directors and said, wait a minute, these vials are not all the same. There's a small number of high-risk vials. That's where all the damage is. And the CDC and FDA said, we disagree. There's no problem with these vials. The FDA has never inspected the vials for concentration of messenger RNA or DNA process-related impurities, which have now been found in the vials, or even visible contaminants. There was a report that visible contaminants have been seen in Japan and elsewhere. So we have a first-rate biological product safety disaster on our hands, real time, where our agencies have turned a blind eye. In fact, our FDA actively promotes the vaccines. The FDA Commissioner Robert Califf tweets out, the vaccines are good, they prevent long COVID, they save lives. We should never have an FDA that advertises a drug product. They're supposed to regulate a drug product, but the CDC and FDA are actually actively advertising. They're not going to pull this product off the market. They're an extension of the pharmaceutical advertising. What do we know? Unfortunately, since the vaccines have rolled out, it's been bad news after bad news. 4 major areas of proven damage to the body: cardiovascular disease, myocarditis, and accelerated atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, cardiac arrest, neurologic, hemorrhagic ischemic stroke, seizures, Guillain-Barré syndrome, small fiber neuropathy. Third category is blood clots. Blood clots, what we've never seen. I've never ordered so many ultrasounds and had so many positive blood clot studies in my life. If you are in practice and you're seeing this, leg discrepancies, cramping that doesn't go away, get an ultrasound, because the blood clots are real, they're large. Immunologic disorders. Recently, media host Megyn Kelly came out. She was interviewing Trump. She said she has an autoimmune problem due to the vaccines. New area of concern, and this paper is just hit from University of Oregon, that is cancer. Could the vaccines cause cancer? This is called the multi-hit hypothesis. If a product causes cancer, it will do it via multiple mechanisms. And in short, the messenger RNA vaccines appear to impair DNA repair. The spike protein suppresses tumor suppressor systems, p53 and BRCA. And now DNA process-related impurities, specifically SV40, simian virus 40, motor Hansen origin of insertion fragments, those are known proto-oncogene activators. They're in the vials. 4 labs have confirmed it. Joe Ladapo, Surgeon General of Florida, sent a letter to the FDA and said, listen, this is the last straw. If you don't inspect these vaccines and tell us what's in them, I'm going to say pull them off the market. The FDA didn't do anything. They wrote them back and said, we don't see a problem. Joe Ladapo came out and said, pull them off the market. That's an MD, PhD from Harvard, who's the Surgeon General of Florida, says these are not safe. Everybody in Pennsylvania should be listening to what he's saying in Florida. We're at 3,400 peer-reviewed papers and case reports on vaccine injuries, disabilities, and deaths, with large numbers of cases. This paper from Harvard has shown on the left-hand panel here, the messenger RNA, and this is what they're stating for, is found in the heart. The messenger RNA is in the heart a month after vaccination. These people died of the vaccine. And the spike protein is produced there locally, causing this white appearance of inflammation. This is extremely disturbing that a synthetic devised segment of messenger RNA is taken up by the human heart. This implies that all messenger RNA vaccines are going to do the same thing. Why wouldn't they? The human heart avidly takes this up, and recently Moderna, which has 40 messenger RNA vaccines in development, 40. And Moderna is a collaboration with the US government. They have an influenza vaccine and many others. They stopped their Epstein-Barr virus vaccine development program temporarily for myocarditis. So heart inflammation is something I think we're going to see with all the messenger RNA vaccines. Ballmeyer and colleagues from Germany has found spike protein directly in the heart of living young men with myocarditis in the hospital in Germany. So when myocarditis is recognized, about half the time it can be recognized, there is spike protein from the vaccine in the human heart causing inflammation. Treckenauer from Germany has reported that the messenger RNA itself in isolated rat cardiomyocytes causes myocyte dysfunction and changes in its channel handling of various electrolytes, sodium, potassium. In short, the cardiomyocytes get sick when they're exposed to Pfizer or Moderna vaccines within 48 hours. So the messenger RNA itself is cardiotoxic. Now this paper hit just a few months ago. Nakahara, University of Texas at Houston is a co-contributor. 100% of people who took the vaccine have changes in the cardiac PET scan results. Cardiac PET is positron emission tomography. It's studying the metabolic uptake of the cardiomyocytes. The heart normally depends on free fatty acids for its fuel. And in this study, after the vaccine, even out to 6 months, the heart preferentially prefers glucose. That's normally an ischemic or a diseased pattern. We don't know what this means. Now, those who had a sore arm, interestingly, they had much more intense abnormalities. And to give you an idea how obvious this is, on the left here, this kind of green and blue pattern, that's normal. Shouldn't really take up any glucose. On the right is a vaccinated person, and it stains intensely red in the left ventricle because the heart is somehow changed, probably by the messenger RNA and the spike protein. We now see cardiac arrests in people who have taken the vaccine in the absence of myocarditis seen at autopsy or by MRI. It may be because of this metabolic cardiomyopathy that's happening in the vaccinated. We don't know the implications, but it was the totality of the abnormalities that were so striking. Yonker and colleagues from Harvard has published this study in Circulation. Young men, young boys with myocarditis, they have spike protein in the blood, but the antibodies that are raised up against it can't neutralize it, whereas the children or boys who don't have myocarditis,
They raise up spike protein, but the antibodies appropriately neutralize it. So these data suggest that when one takes a vaccine, it's somewhat of a gamble. That if we can't raise antibodies that neutralize the spike protein is going to do damage in the human body. All of this should have been studied and thought about ahead of time. You can see this is such a tremendous gamble. With myocarditis, heart inflammation is 90% are young men. The peak age is 18 to 24. It seems to have a predilection for hitting athletes, maybe because athletes have more myocardial uptake of the vaccine material or spike protein because of increased blood flow. The cardiac arrests appear to happen on the playing field, or they actually happen during sleep, between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Both times there may be a surge of adrenaline playing sports for sure, but also in the normal waking process of sleep. But there have been death after death after death reported. Here's a paper that we now have in press showing that myocarditis occurs, again, mainly in young men, but on doses 1, 2, and 3. It can happen in older people. Bruce Arians, former coach of Tampa Bay Bucks, he was pushing the vaccines. He was hospitalized for a month in his 70s with myocarditis. Barmada and colleagues from Yale have shown that myocarditis or heart inflammation, when it's seen on MRI, it's not clearing up. The majority of young people, even 9 months or a year later, have, it looks like, damage to the heart. Now, normally, the human heart has some repair capabilities, but these bigger defects are not clearing up. And then the fatal cases started coming in 2021. This is Choi and colleagues, 22-year-old man in Korea, takes Pfizer, 5 days afterwards, comes in the hospital, chest pain, and he dies in the hospital despite all the resuscitative capabilities they have, and his heart is destroyed with inflammation, including the conduction system. Conclusion, fatal Pfizer COVID-19 myocarditis, 5 days in a young man who doesn't need the vaccine to begin with. This case alone should have prompted an emergency evaluation of every single hospital in the entire country that was mandating this on their workforce, should have gone up and down the FDA. It should have raised alarm bells everywhere. This is such a clear case. Yet not a single one of your colleagues raised a concern. Not a single one of the cardiologists in your community said, wait a minute, there's a fatal, clear-cut fatal case of vaccine myocarditis. Now these two boys, age 16 and 17, found dead in bed on days 3 and 4 after the second dose of Pfizer. Connecticut, University of Michigan, University of Minnesota, they evaluate the autopsy findings. It's clear, it's Pfizer fatal vaccine myocarditis. The parents don't even get a chance to do CPR or call the paramedics. They've lost their children to Pfizer. Again, no community outrage. No cardiologist in Connecticut not concerned. Fabian Trump, Olympic marathoner, Switzerland, takes 3 doses of Pfizer, gets myocarditis, and she announces, I've got it. I've got myocarditis. I am not going to run until I can get this cleared up. She made the right to exercise and compete. Some will have a cardiac arrest. So even before COVID, if someone had myocarditis due to Coxsackie virus or giant cell, it was in our guidelines. Athletes cannot play sports if they have myocarditis. The FDA in June of 2021 put out a warning that COVID vaccines cause myocarditis, Pfizer and Moderna, June of 2021. What happened in August of 2021? The NFL says we're mandating the vaccines on the players. Why would the NFL mandate vaccines that it was known that they cause myocarditis? September of 2021, LeBron James comes out and says, I did my research, I've studied this, the best thing to do is take a vaccine. How can he conclude that when the FDA says it causes myocarditis, when other athletes are saying, listen, I am going to take care of this so I don't get in trouble? Now, this paper was published, I'm senior author, Nick Hosher from University of Michigan. It's clear, there are now autopsies coming in all over of fatal vaccine-induced myocarditis. People take the vaccine, there's inflammation in the heart, There's clearly biomarkers we can measure to try to detect this, EKG, if we can get an MRI, ante-mortem. But exercise or adrenaline triggers ventricular tachycardia. It rapidly degenerates to ventricular fibrillation. About 40% of the time, if it's witnessed, they can be saved. So there's been about 1,000 cardiac arrests of soccer players in Europe. There's been about 1,000 athletes in the United States, too, that have gone down high school, college, and pro. But 60% are not saved. You saw Damar Hamlin, Buffalo Bills, make a tackle, gets up, claps, cardiac arrest. I was on Tucker Carlson that night, actually, or the next night, and I said, that looks like a COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis cardiac arrest. It's because we're working on this. I know what I'm talking about. Later on, Hamlin hedges, I'm not sure, he would just want to go into it. And in the end, he goes, I know what it was. It's because I tackled a guy hard. No. There's never been a case of commotio cordis in the NFL or college because the pads prevent them. He had vaccine myocarditis, and the Bills said they were going to let him play, but he really hasn't played much, and I think they're just going to kind of jettison this. What he needs is a defibrillator, because he could have another arrest. And boy, this athlete wishes he had one. This is Oscar Cabrera Adames. This is the case. He's a basketball player for Dominican. He plays in the European leagues. When the vaccines came out, he said, listen, I don't want to take a vaccine. He announces ahead of time. He's forced to take it. He has a cardiac arrest while playing basketball in Spain. On the floor, he gets resuscitated. He gets out of basketball, and now he's on a treadmill. 2 years later, in 2023, trying to come back, and he has a fatal cardiac arrest on the treadmill. That's the reason why Damar Hamlin can't play, because he could have a fatal cardiac arrest on the field. And the Bills doctors know that because I wrote them and told them that. And I told the Buffalo Evening News. They know that I know. And I've written the American College of Cardiology, and I said, American College of Cardiology, which says the benefits of vaccination outweigh the risks. I said, I disagree, and here's the reason why. This case is important. He took the shots in 2021. He died in 2023. The next cardiac arrest you see in someone with no antecedent disease, particularly in these athletes who are screened for cardiomyopathies and other problems, it is the vaccine as the cause of death if they've been vaccinated, or if there's proof otherwise. Listen, if it's a suicide, a drug overdose, or something else, that will be vetted. But these unexplained deaths, which are pouring in right now, you see it every day on social media, it is the vaccine until proven otherwise. We must, as healthcare providers, we must take that conservative stance. And blood clots as well. This paper, which is a huge sample size, is 745,000 vaccinated, 1.3 unvaccinated group of individuals. And what you can see 2 years after the shot are systemic arterial and venous embolism, and then retinal artery and vein blood clots. There's about a 4-fold increased risk. Everybody who took a shot is hypercoagulable. Everyone, to some degree. It's my experience, if they have underlying blood clotting disorders, that's when the risks really go up, like factor V Leiden or protein C and S mutations. So be on your guard for blood clots. And what the ophthalmologists are seeing in the eye are these asymptomatic small thrombi in the blood vessels. What they say is, listen, they're not coming from the eye, they are circulating in the body. Micro blood clots are circulating in the body. This is a huge study to suggest that. So without protection, more harm will be done. Now Pfizer, under court order, released their post-marketing data more than a year late. And they were forced to. The lawyer for the FDA did not want to release the data for 55 years. So the FDA did not want you to know this. This is proof positive our FDA is involved in a biological safety cover-up. What they wanted to block to you is that Pfizer knew about 1,223 deaths within 90 days of their release of their vaccine on December 11th, 2020. People took Pfizer and they started dying quickly. Pfizer did not pull it off the market. The FDA didn't pull it off the market. Almost certainly this was going to happen with Moderna and Janssen. And the deaths were allowed to continue. I gathered a group and we performed the largest autopsy series. 74% of the autopsies that have been done right now of people who died, looks like the vaccine is the cause of death when it's suspected. We published this on the Lancet preprint server. They immediately, within a day, suppressed it. We now have it nearly fully published in one of the forensic pathology journals. But the leading causes of death after vaccination are cardiovascular, myocarditis, heart failure, myocardial infarction, cardiac arrest, thrombosis. And there's a small number of cases where it's multi-system, multiple systems. But when you think of vaccines and you think about death, it's almost all cardiovascular. No one thinks the vaccines are safe. I was testifying in Congress on Friday, January 12th. At the same day, the Japanese were holding a major meeting where the Japanese doctors were reporting the exact same things that I told Congress and what I'm telling you today, that they're not safe. They're causing record side effects. World Council for Health 2022, which is a worldwide public health organization similar to the WHO. Is there an NGO? They said pull them off the market, not safe for human use. They issued a report on every safety system worldwide reporting record numbers of deaths. Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, which is an organization I belong to, says pull them off the market, not safe for human use, and they give 10 reasons why. So the next time you have a discussion with somebody and say, oh, it's just you, doctor, you're the one who thinks they're not safe. Say, no, listen. We have Senate testimony from me, congressional testimony, UK Parliament, the EU Parliament, two major societies, one international, one American. There I am in the US Senate, European Parliament. There I was last Friday. They know that I know, and they know that you know, the vaccines aren't safe. What did the vaccines do anyway? They were supposed to stop COVID and the pandemic. My estimate is if we had no vaccines, this would have been over with 2 years ago. Spanish flu was 2 years. It ran through the population in 2 years. By introducing vaccines and doing it on a broad scale, we put ecological pressures on the virus, and it mutated and it mutated and it mutated to keep escaping the effects of the vaccine. So just like our government agencies basically have completely abrogated their responsibility in public health, they make false claims regarding the vaccines. They don't prevent infection with the current strains. There are no studies to support that. They don't stop transmission. Our CDC director finally admitted that in summer of 2021. And they don't reduce hospitalization and death. No single prospective randomized placebo-controlled trials ever show that. No valid observational studies show that. And they're not going to prevent COVID from coming back. They have completely failed. The vast majority of people who took a vaccine have gotten COVID. In populations that vaccinated everyone, that means all the hospitalizations and deaths occurred in the vaccinated. That happened in the UK and Australia and New Zealand. Why does the medical community think the vaccines work? And this is an important study by Fung and colleagues because of bias. Remember, the institutions mandated the vaccines. The doctors all took the vaccines. They want to believe that they work. There is an intense emotional belief that they want to believe the vaccines work even if they don't. Well, in reality, what happened over time is there were milder mutations as people were vaccinated, so the virus wasn't nearly as virulent. The hospital emergency EMRs, the default was unvaccinated. When we said it was a crisis of the unvaccinated, that's because the EMR said unvaccinated for everybody, because unless you really pushed your case, you can imagine being on a ventilator or BiPAP or something. You can't prove to somebody you're vaccinated. Everyone was counted as unvaccinated. And so they threw off the data. There was differential testing for the vaccinated and unvaccinated to bias it. There's been no linkage of any US study to the CDC vaccine data, no control for early treatment, and natural immunity, which actually do reduce the severity of illness. Not the vaccine, but if they got early treatment or if they've had COVID before, and no adjudication of COVID illness later on. Huge conflict of interest with the universities. So we've been sold a bill of goods that the vaccines are effective. We have to demand randomized trials, and they're simply not there. The consent form doesn't list transmission or hospitalization and death as benefits. The consent form says only past tense that the vaccines have been shown to prevent COVID in prior studies. So when Robert Califf, the FDA commissioner, says, oh, the vaccines reduce hospitalization and death, he's making a false claim. Or recently he tweeted out, he's somebody who I know, he's a cardiologist, we have worked together a lot. When he tweeted out that the vaccines reduce long COVID, it's a false claim. We can't allow our FDA officials to make false claims. That's deceiving the public. The FDA should make no claims about the vaccine. They should be adjudicated safety. Now, the Omicron variant, which is the current variant now going on its third year, is a highly mutated variant, and it broke through natural immunity. So you can get COVID over and over again. Prior to Omicron, natural immunity was holding up. But it's clear, these data are from the UK. It should be obvious to you, the vaccinated are the ones getting hospitalized and having bad outcomes. A vaccine that works would never generate data like this. It's impossible. What's happened is record amounts of money has passed hands and is driving this. And then lastly, censorship and reprisal are working to crush freedom of speech, scientific discourse, and medical progress, and none of this looks good. So, I'm holding strong. I'm remaining bold and relentless, and I'm asking you to join me in this. We need to roar like a lion. We've looked at the evidence, the fate of our country, the fate of the world at hand. A lot of people don't understand this, in a sense, this battle that we're engaged with within a larger war. But something is going on, and it's very big right now, and you can play a really positive role in the outcomes of it. So thank you so much for having me. The call to action is let's drop the vaccine mandates, let's stop all this pressure, coercion, and reprisal, ban discrimination, get these products off the market, begin everything we can on vaccine injury treatment and recovery, pivot to early treatment for remaining cases.